Hello guys, and welcome again to another video. Today I will show you how we can use native functions in JavaScript such as split, splice, join, and math.random, etc. Well, just a few of them really. To actually make stuff like a random color generator, and we can manipulate strings as well, or in this manner, words or sentences, or well, letters. For the first one, as you can see, we have a functionality of generating a random color each time we call upon the button of generate. And we can also have a, what do you call this? An option where we can choose what type of color, like what, I don't know what it's called, but I think format of color, like color code. There's stuff like RGB, HSL, and hex. Now I'm not sure what their abbreviation stands for. Well, I do know about HSL, which is hue, saturation, and lightness, if I'm not mistaken. RGB is for red, green, and blue, like how much red this side has, how much green this side has, and how much blue this side has. And for hex code, it's I find hex code to be the most complicated one, really. But really, the only thing we need to take note of is that we will need to take three. This is for colors, okay? Like three stuff. So as you can see for RGB, if we generate, there we go, like the blue, the amount of green, and the amount of red. And we have the highest for red, which is 170. That is why we get um, a resemblance of color red here, or at least in the spectrum of red. Somewhat red violet, I'm not too sure. And another one, and another one. You can also have HSL. As you can see, it's generating randomly. Now, what is behind this random generation of colors? Well, if we take a look at our code, well, this is just HTML and pretty much just the buttons, some styles to make it look somewhat pleasant, because I don't really like using Bootstrap or anything like, let's say, like automatic. Well, I do like Tailwind, but you get what I mean. I'd like to customize my own stuff. Anyway, let's go to color.js. This is where the JavaScript for generating random colors reside. First, let's take a look at the first line or first lines. So what we are doing here is just getting the elements that we need. So this is one of the constraints of vanilla JavaScript, really, if you're using it inside the browser or the client, which is the pretty much the core purpose of JavaScript. It's for interactivity. So for vanilla, we need to get each element, and that is dependent on their class, ID, name, etc. If you can check here, we have get element by ID, elements, so this returns an array. Just take note of that, my name, etc. And I recommend using query selector because over here I think it doesn't return an array, does it? But I had some troubles in the past uh, using these methods. That's because there's a difference when in which it's being collected. Okay, there we go. So this is their difference. For get elements by class name, it returns an HTML collection. And I'm mistaken, it also returns an array. For query selector all, it returns a node list. Now, node list means a list of nodes. Now, nodes refer to each and every part of the DOM. So, think of this DOM as like a tree. And the root of this tree is like this HTML right here. And of course, it expands to the head and the body. And inside the body, it will be, let's say you can treat as like a trunk. And for each trunk, there will be branches, which is the children. And for each branch, there will be leaves, and as you can see here. And for each continuous branch and etc., it has another set of children, and so on and so forth. Now for a node list, it will include comments and stuff like that. While for HTML collection, it will not include comments and will only include the element itself, like the elements recognized by JavaScript. For example, as you can see, we have this, the button, select, and so on and so forth. Right, that's not quite important, but I just showed you how to get stuff in JavaScript or elements in JavaScript. And if you noticed, I actually added a period. Wait, document or selector. There we go. So query selector pretty much means a selector, which is what we use in CSS, as you can see here. For classes, or to target or get classes, we need to use a period to select them. And for IDs, we need to use a hashtag, but really if you aren't get for IDs, it's much more preferable to use this. Make it semantic and readable. And for children, we also use asterisk and so on and so forth. Pretty much think of this as like selecting stuff in CSS. Anyway, let's get on to business. First, we have the generator color button, which is this button right here. And if we check this button, which when we click generates a new color, has exactly the same ID. So that means this element right here refers to this button right here. So now we actually attached an event listener to that. And our event listener or add event listener is built in JavaScript, which is native. Now there are a set of parameters given to you, like the first parameter, which are click, pointer enter, mouse enter, etc., etc., which you can see in websites really like W3 schools, developer.mozilla stuff, just all of those programming and techie websites. For now, let's focus on the click. Now this event listener will take on the parameter of click, which means that for each click, it will run the callback function, which is its second parameter. Now callback function is pretty much self-explanatory. It means that this is a function that we will call back to after some kind of event. In this case, we will call this function after this event listener fires, or like the condition for this listener to activate fires. For example, or in this case, click. When this button is clicked, or rather, in the event that this button is clicked, we will run the function of generate color. That is why we don't pass the parentheses here, as you can see. If you have worked with JavaScript for a while, you'll know that to call a function or to invoke a function, which is the right term to use, invoke a function, you need to use a parenthesis, which is pretty much you calling it. In this case, we are not calling it because we want this to be used as a reference to this event listener or as a callback function. Now, this function is right here. First, we actually get the format, or like what kind of format does the user want this to be generated. And we will get that through the select. If we check on what kind of ID this select has, the one I opened, as you can see, to choose options, it is color type, or rather, the ID is color type. If we check here, it's const color format equals documents.getElementById by ID color type. If we check here, we are getting the value of this element. Now you might be confused for like if you're starting out, because I was, because if you can see here, there's no value provided. And in React, or like in frameworks or libraries, because React is a library, this will be provided in your InstillSense. So what you see here is called InstillSense, like suggestions of words that you want. But fret not, even if it's not included in the InstillSense, this is still a valid value, because if you noticed, it can actually generate colors properly. So there are two types here. default value and value. I recommend value though, because I'm not sure. I think default value is being deprecated. I'm not sure, okay? You can check it in other, like in tech websites. But I've always used value, so there's that. Then I just instantiated color to actually since we are not like since we want to change this color and make this accessible in this block as well, because if we just say const color, there we go. It should only be available in this block. Block scoped variable is what they say. Now, I think I should discuss that. Okay, I should. Now, what is a block scoped variable? Well, it's self-explanatory again, which is that it is only available in that specific block. In this case, if we declare a variable in an enclosed like this here, enclosed, what do you call this, brackets, it will only be available in the block. In this case, inside the block of an if statement. So that's the purpose of keywords, really, to declare them inside the block. So in this case, we are declaring the generate color button element inside the block of the overall file, like globally available, all the file here. So the root, so you can also think of this as like a tree. So the root itself is like, well, the file itself, and then it expands to functions, to if statements, to for loops, etc., etc., which is called blocks. As you can see here inside the brackets, this is called a code block. Okay. Now, why did I use color instead of var? Well, first of all, it's my preference, and second of all, I'm used to it. However, there is a difference between var and let. Excuse me. And that is that var, even if you declare it inside a block, for example, inside of an if statement, it will be available outside of that scope or block. As you can see here, there's an error because cannot redeclare block scope variable color. Okay, where was I? The repairman came and fixed our Wi-Fi. Anyway, I think I was in the point of talking about block scoped variables, var and let. Okay, so let is only for, well, it's block scoped. As you can see here, it's not going outside of the block. So you can use let to actually individually declare variables with the same name if you want. But, in my opinion, it's going to ruin readability all in all. But pretty much that's the difference between let and var. Let is inside the block itself only, while var makes it available outside the block. Now, I'm curious, actually. What if we declare a color here and say that we want to declare a color here of var? Interesting. Well, I'm also in the same boat. Oh. So I guess a function is its own block. Like an if statement can have stuff go outside. In this case, like its variables can go outside, while the function, its variables can only stay inside of it. That's my guess here. Okay, let's move on because this is getting kind of confusing. Excuse me for a minute. Alright. I always keep getting off topic, but let's proceed as it's getting me confused as well. Okay, color. So still go accessible. Excuse me, I'm stuttering. Still accessible in this case. Bar. Yeah, I think this is the reason why I used let. Goodness. Just do that. That. The local would be gone. Yeah, there we go. But just take note of that difference. So if you say bar here, or rather, let here, there we go. So let is always block scoped. Var is local. That means it's inside the like overall function block, I guess. That's my guess. And since if statements are like for loops, etc., are like, let's say, premature blocks. I don't know the term really. But let's just proceed as I don't want this to be a confusing video. Our main focus are colors, so let's get right to that. Anyway, we declare the color because we want to change it by checking everything. So since this format cannot be undefined, it always has a value. We're just checking what type of format we want. So in this case, the value of the select. Right here, HSL, here RGB. So if it's hex, then we'll run the generate hex color, which is up here. Now, we're finally getting to the main part of the video, which is some syntax that you might want to learn if you're starting out in JavaScript to make your life easier. Now, what we see here on the very first top is just a string, a string of characters that is relevant to hex code. Now, if you check hex codes, Xcode characters, I think, should we call them? Anyway, I don't know how to find that. I'll just discuss it here. Anyway, for hex colors, in this case, we have from 0 to 9, and then from A to F. Excuse me. Now, color white will be FFF, and color black will be 000. So you can think of this as like the spectrum from 0 to F is from black to white. Now, I don't fully understand hex colors because I prefer RGB and HSL, but that is pretty much the basis of this. The end, or like the farthest left, is black, and the farthest end of the other side is white. So 0 and F. So just take note of this, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. After that, since I actually don't want to deal with making my own array. Okay, I got interrupted by our cat again. I cut. Anyway, let's continue. Of course, as developers, we want to make things as easy as possible, and instantiating an array individually like this is pretty cumbersome. And you can just do stuff like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Something like that. So this is where the split comes in. So what this does is split an array, split a string, and forms it, or rather, this returns an array of those strings. So in this case, they are called substrings. Now there are ways to pass on the parameter here. So what kind of separator, or what kind of separation we want? So I've always used this string here, and I haven't used regexp yet. But I will tell you the very basic, which is what I've been using. So for just a string here, like that, a simple empty string, that would be, or that would mean to split them by each character, letter, or number. Well, character, okay? So you will split them by each character. So this will result to console.log. But if we just check, did it save? It's pretty loggy. Okay, there we go. As you can see, it separated each and every character of the string right here. Now, if we set a limit, as what we've seen, like 2, there we go. It only split it up to 2. Excuse me. Up to 2 characters, which is 0 and 1. Now, if we add a space, it will split it by a space or by spaces. There we go. We put a space between B and C. And now, in the array, the first value or the 0th index is the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, while the second value or the first index is C, D, E, F, as you can see here, in this case. And this is the thing you need to notice, is that what is in between this string or these quotation marks is an empty space. That is why it separated the strings into substrings based on what is in the middle, which is the empty space. As you can see here, we have an empty space. Now, if we add, let's say, a period, and still there's an empty space, it will not split it into substrings. It will just return an array if there is no period. But if we add a period here, as you can see, it separated it in the period, or it used the period as the separator, or like as the intersection for separation. As you can see, it left the blank space, or the white space rather, it's called here. So that's pretty much how you can use split to manipulate your strings and open up a world of other possibilities in JavaScript. Now, we just declare a color and just add a hashtag. I'm not sure the other term for this, but it's called hashtag for me, or like for what I know, but yeah. Anyway, we'll just add the numbers later on. That's why we just instantiated the hashtag, because we actually want the hashtag to generate a color. If I just, there we go. You can see the hashtag and then the numbers. Now, what you see here is the number 6. So that is the general, or like the, is it the minimum? No, I think 3 is the minimum. Sorry, 3. Yeah, 3 is the minimum. So I think 6 is for like, let's say HSL, the saturation, lightness, and stuff. But yeah, for 8, it's you including an opacity, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. So you can see if I just, there we go, is just generate one low opacity. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you can see some are low in opacity while others aren't. So the last 2 digits is for how clear or transparent the color will be, or in this case it's called opacity. And this, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty much in RGB, blue, and then green, and then the first 2 is red. So it's always been general for me to use 6 characters in hex color. So I used 6 in this array, or in this for loop. So what's happening here is that first, we actually instantiate a variable. So this is the fundamentals of for loops, like the general use for loops. First, you instantiate a variable. If you want to use the index method of for loops, so index pretty much means like using numbers and then adding it by 1, or yeah, by 1, I think, yeah, or depending on you really. So in this case, we have declaration You can also use const, but in this context, const is not good because we're actually changing the value of the I. So now we have the declaration. Declaration. The second one would be the condition, which is if this is true, we will run this loop. If this is not true, we will stop looping through this loop, or like we will stop the loop all in all. This is a condition to avoid infinite loops, which is what will cause your app to crash. That's why you need to set proper conditions inside of this. Now the last one would be the kind of operation we want to perform after we end the loop, I think. Yeah. So in this case, we actually want for the loop to end, but also to execute the loop at the same time. That's why we're adding 1 to I here. So this plus plus is a shorthand for I equals I plus 1. So that's a shorthand for I equals I plus 1 or I plus equal 1. So if you just want to increment the value, just use I plus plus, or you can also use plus plus I. Now the difference between plus plus I and I plus plus is that if you put the plus plus on the left side, that means the number 1 will be what's on the left side, while in this case, the number 1 will be what's on the right side. Now you need to take note of this for decrements, I minus minus or minus minus I. So what 1 will be on this side, and the same will be true for the latter. Now let's get on to this code block. So in this case, we're just using color plus equal. That means the existing color, add that, or rather, we will instantiate a new color, and this new color will be equal to the previous color, which is this as well, previous color, plus what is the result of this. So we're just getting the array of X letters, which is what we divided into substrings of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then getting a value from it. Since all of this, or the length of this is equal to 16, we actually multiply it by 16. Or I think we can just actually make this more dynamic by you just saying X letters dot length. So you don't need to count this by hand. Okay, so to generate stuff randomly, you can use the math.random in JavaScript. And by I mean randomly, I mean randomly. So if you want to use this to generate random stuff, I think it's known to be problematic, but I haven't really dug deep into it. So just take that into mind. Anyway, it works fine in this context. So, you can use math.random for a random color generator. Anyway, math.random returns a random decimal value. So that would mean just between 0 and 1. So we check. Oh, did I save it? What did I change? Oh, there we go. Just loaded up. Excuse me. As you can see, it's 0.927 blah blah, and the next one 0.8. So between 0 and 1, it will never reach 1. It will never reach 0. Just a pure decimal. Now we want to multiply it by the length. So we actually don't want it to be at 0. So if we just say times 16 in this case, so you can see we get something like this. Or by 10, then we get, well, we will move the decimal by 10th place, so we get what is like the value, or like the 10th decimal place when we didn't multiply it by 10 here, which is 0.836, and now it became 8.36 after multiplying it by 10. Anyway, after that, we want to round it off using either math.floor or math.round. So math.floor is pretty much a math.round, but it will remove any decimal. I think the functions are the same. Let's try math.round actually. Yeah, they're the same. Yeah, they're the same. Okay. So you can use math.floor or math.random, math.floor or math.round to round off a decimal. But they should have differences here. I just haven't dug deep into it. Let's do recent errors. Yeah, this is pretty much not understandable somewhat. So the grid is. So I think this is like round up, if I'm not mistaken. Eh. Just take note that this is used to actually remove the decimal in math.random. So they're like a pair, math.round, math.floor, etc. And after that, we just return the color because we just finished the loop. And the result of that will be this right here. What? Why am I getting undefined? Oh, is it because I used math.round? Yeah, I think I did. Alright, it's working properly. Oh, math.round gave some undefined values. Interesting. Let me just drink some water. Now let's proceed to generate RGB color. Now this one is the easiest. We just need to take note of the values inside the parentheses. So for the first one, we just want to generate a random value again, and we just need to take note of the maximum amount that this value can go to, which is in RGB it's 255. So 0 will be black and 255 would be white, or like 0 would be none of that color, which in this case for red 0, that is no red at all, while 255 would be like all of the red possible. That's the only word I can come up with, like all the red possible and all the green possible, etc. So in this case, we just want to generate random values for each of them. In this case, as you can see here, 3, and there are 3 values, so we just loop through them. And of course, first we want to instantiate an array because we will be pushing it. We will be pushing each value that we get from the math.floor times math.random multiplied to the maximum value that a value of a color can get to, which is 255, and then the result will now be inside this array for each loop. It will add it. So push is pretty much you will add items to the end of the array. There we go. To the end of an array. Excuse me. Okay. Now after finishing the loop, we just want to do exactly what we did earlier, which is to add current value of the color, which is RGB, equal to the current color plus the parentheses, of course, like here, plus the colors itself, which is the value inside of the parentheses here. So here this join is pretty much the same as split, but in this case we're just joining all of them together. For example, we have an array of substrings, or yeah, substrings. We just join them together into a string, and we can provide what can we call a separator and antonym? What kind of conjoiner? No. What kind of middleman? No. What is the thing, or what are the values, I guess, that will be in between each of the joined value? So for example, we have this. For example, we have an array of H, L-O, or rather H, E, L, L, and O, and we want to join them together. Now, if I console log this, we will get and this is very slow, huh? Okay, we will get hello, but if we add, let's say, a space, we will get, well, a space in between. If we add a comma, we will get a comma in between. So that would be what kind of character or value will be in between each of the joined value. Okay, value of H and value of L, in between of them will have an element or character of comma, and the value of L and the value of O, in between of them will have the character of comma. So that's what join does. Now for HSL, it's the same thing. I just instantiated an if condition because for HSL, the first value is actually from 0 to 360, which is the U, and the second value is 0% to 100%, which is the saturation, how saturated you want your color to be, and from the lightness is 0% to 68 to 100%, which is from black to white. There we go. So those are all the things we can use in JavaScript to actually make a random color generator. Those are if statements, array operations, which is dot split, dot join, and dot push, as well as math operations, which is just math.random and math.floor. Oh, and for loops. All right. Now, what we have here down below is hello. For example, we have all small letters, hello world. And first, let's just, we want to transform all of this, all the letters, they should be named all letters. All letters. And this should be named all the characters, so hello world. That means each of this will be capitalized. There we go, hello world. Now if we choose each word, there we go. Okay, this is kind of confusing. Each first letter of each word. There we go. Now that's more clear. World. First letter of H and W will be capitalized. Very nice. So I also just used for loops, split, join in this case, but I also added something which is shift, unshift, car at, and what was that? Splice. Now you don't have to worry about those stuff. I will explain it. Okay. So first, we get the elements, instantiate the variables to manipulate or to change. So this is like manually store them here. Temporarily manually store them. And add event listeners to the inputs, which is the first input would be the sentence to manipulate right here. And then the other input would be the max length to cut. So the cut is pretty much world. Example, we want to cut by 3 and by character. You can see we actually cut it and only got the first three characters. But if we want to cut it by word, hello world, I love you, it will cut until the third word, which is I right here. Okay, anyway, So after that, oh, excuse me. So the generate value is right here. Generate manipulated word. It's an event listener to this button. So if it's clicked, we will get the text, which will transform the value of the sentence right here. So you can also make use of parameters here. You can pass on a parameter of sentence, but in this case, the sentence up here is globally accessible to all the functions, so it's not really needed. Anyway, we just get the type of transformation because we actually have a preference here if you want to transform all the characters or just the first letter of each word. Now to do that, we just have an conditional statements or if statements. For the first one, if you want to transform all the words, or in this case, all the characters, I didn't take note of that, but okay, let's change that. All the characters. And all the characters right here. Excuse me. We will run this function. First, as earlier, we will split all the sentence, all of the characters of the sentence into separate parts. So now they will be, let's say we have a sentence of hello. They will be separated into an array of HELLO. The length of that array would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we instantiate a new array to actually push the new values we get, so that we are not, so because we need to finish this for loop and we can't return something in here, what we need is to like loop through each value of the substring array, because we actually want to manipulate each of those values. Now this is another way to use for loop, which is to just get the value, or like to just loop through each value of an array. In this case, we have an array of characters, which is right here, HELLO, and the scar here will pretty much just represent the value of the character we are currently in, which is, for example, for the first loop or first run of the loop is H, second run of the loop is E, and so on and so forth. Now, the constraint of this is you're not going to have access to the index, but this is pretty good if you just want to actually use the value inside of an array, or the values rather, and you don't want to get the index and stuff like that. And after that, it's pretty simple. We just push or add a new value to the end of an array, because we're actually looping through this from the start to finish. So the way we add items should be from the start to finish as well. And then the value of that would be equal to the value we get, the character we get, and then just transform that to uppercase. After that, after the loop finishes, we will get the value of the new word and join all of the characters we pushed into this together, and we will get the value, which is what we see right here. Next would be each first letter of each word. Hello world, first letter, HW, there we go. Now this is somewhat special because there's one extra step we need to do, which looks very confusing at first, especially for me. Before, it's very confusing to look at this, but let's take this out, or like a surgery. Let's cut this one by one. I don't know how to make analogies yet, but yeah. Anyway, first we want to split, or rather, let me start from the beginning. Since we want to get, or since we only want to get for each first letter, or we only want to get the first letters or first letter of each word, we actually want to split the sentence word by word, because we are expecting a sentence. So to do that, we just need to split them by empty spaces. So even if you add a lot of space here, it will still work as intended. And the same thing, which is just instantiated a new sentence of array, which is where we will push our new value. Now the same loop. So per word of words, or like for each value of the word inside of the array words, we will run this function. So first we will get the transformed letter. In this case, to get the transformed letter, we just want to get the word, get the character, or get its character at position of 0. So this is the same as word 0. However, take note that when you do this, you're actually indexing. So I think this is called indexing. You're actually indexing, or oh no, I think it's accessing a key of an array. Yeah. So in this case, for an array, its key would be its index, or like the key of each individual values would be equal to the position it's in, or the index it's in, to access it. But in this case, we're dealing with the string. That's why we cannot use this method. So to get the first letter, we just use the char. There we go. Returns a character specified index. After that, this will return the character, or the first letter. For in this case, it's H. After that, we will just run the to uppercase method, which will convert this H to uppercase. Now, excuse me. Now we want to split the word because we want to change the first letter into the new transformed value. And now, after splitting it, it will become an array of characters once again. And to actually change the first value of an array, we can just use the method of shift. If you read, if we can read here, move the first element. So this is the same as characters dot pop. It removes an element, but in this case for pop, it's at the end of the array, or the end value of the array, or of an array. But for shift, it's the first value. In this case, the first letter. After that, we unshift, or in this case, we add or insert a value at the beginning of an array. There we go. Start. So for push, we add to the end. For unshift, we add to the start, or to the beginning. And the value we want to add would be the transformed first letter. After that, the character would be finished, but they are still split apart, so we need to join them together right here. And after joining them together, we can now push them inside of the new sentence array. Now, after going through all of the words that's existing inside the sentence, we can now return them while joining them together once again as they become one whole sentence, just like before. Now we just have an if statement. Oh wait, okay. So that's pretty much it for transforming this to uppercase and stuff. Now we have the cut. So for example, I want to cut it by character, and the length would be 4 or 5. As you can see, it's been cut right here. As you can see, 6. It's cut right here. And I just added the ellipsis here just to indicate that this text is not, or that rather, this text has been cut. So let's go through this one by one. First, we check if the max length before cutting is not equal to 0. So at first load, it's actually empty, and we instantiated the max length here as 0. So if it's empty, that means the user didn't actually want to have or to cut the sentence or the words you specify here, the string rather. So So if we want to cut it by character, we just instantiate the cut text, which is what will return, and then we will split them by each character. So that's the main difference here, really. We will split the text by each character, and then the new method is splice. So what this does is actually remove something from an array. Now this is the, so it takes two parameters, right? Two, yeah. So as you can see here, the start. So which index do you want this function to start cutting? So like, or rather, it will save this value. So from 0, save this value. And then the second parameter would be the end of that saved value, and the rest would be cut off. So for example, we have 5 here, and I just say hello 1, and the characters by, there we go. The 1 has been cut because we only want this to get the values from 0, 1, 2, 3 until 5. Then after that, just cut everything off. And in this case, we cut off 1, or like 1, 2, 2. Still the same value. If you increase it by 1, it will be hello 1. And the values 2, 2 is cut off. So that's what splice does. After that, we just join them together to form the new word. And then for the split by word, we just join them together again, but add a space between them just to retain the old value, which is just having space, really. As you can see here, there you go. Okay, and now right here is just that if we actually cut the text. So if in this case, if we specify something more than, or if we specify an indicator more than the length that we currently have here, if you notice, it will not be cut because 7 words, but we only have 3 words here. Well, this is not a word, but you get what I mean. Oh, all right. I think that's all. I think this is not really a tips and tricks. It's more like a guide how to manipulate strings and such. But there it is. Thank you for watching and good luck on your development journey.